Before we go any further, just want to thank all the people over on Patreon, because without their help, none of this upgraded content that you be seeing would be possible. Over on the Patreon, you get exclusive sneak peeks at upcoming videos. You also get access to the Patreon only Discord server. Coming up soon, I'm going to be working on talking about other anime that I can't talk about here on YouTube, like say ReZero, Konosuba, and etc. I'm also going to start posting the scripts for video essays, and every 3 months we do an anime and manga haul. We also are going to open up the Patreon only Discord server to YouTube members at the $2 price tier, which also means that members will be seeing their name here alongside the patron. But with that being said, let's get back into today's video. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another review for Boruto Naruto Next Generations, episode 288. And now that episode 288 is done in the books, we got a lot to talk about, because this episode definitely continues the faster pacing for the Code arc. We adapted the back half of Boruto chapter 57, as well as the entirety of Boruto chapter 58. If you're hoping for extended cuts of Boruto and Team 7 versus Kawaki, that's not the route that the anime went here. I know some people were hoping that Sarada versus Kawaki would get extended, or they're hoping for some type of Sakuga cuts when Boruto versus Kawaki takes place in the episode. That's not what happened here. You basically got average animation for the fight itself. Me personally, I wouldn't expect any type of Sakuga until we get to probably Boruto chapter 66 being adapted. Anything before that's just a pleasant surprise. However, with my initial thoughts out of the way, let's back things up and get into initial recap, because I know a lot of you guys do not like it when I go more so into the technical stuff with animation, start talking about character acting and squashing, stretching, etc. So let's just get into the recap. The first thing I'll say is that the episode picks up with the last one left off, where you have Eida looking back at Code, and the first thing that Eida says to Code is like, go ahead and try to attack me if you can, but you can't, can you? And you see Code struggling, and it's because Code's already been placed under her enchantment power. Once you're under that power of her, you can't physically harm her. If you try to harm her, you're going to do damage to yourself. That's why Code couldn't attack her. And so I like how the anime just showed you that moment where Code, his own body, was betraying him. And so after we get past the opening credits, you have Code, and he's turned into Super Simp mode, where he's asking Bug like, hey, do you think that Eida likes me? You think I got a chance with her? And Bug's like, you fool, we need to get away from here. You don't understand. And so the anime adds in an extra scene to where one of Boro's guards ends up walking up to her, and that guard goes from trying to stop her to all of a sudden he's turned into a simp, and Eida's just flat out seduced him because of her abilities. It goes back to what I said just now. Everybody who falls under Eida's spell cannot harm her. Now, the next thing that you get here, after Eida finishes brushing her teeth, she ends up walking in on Code when Code's talking about how great her powers of clairvoyance are, and Eida basically shuts everything down. Eida says, it isn't everything that you believe it to be cracked up to be. And Eida says, think of it like this: I can watch every surveillance camera in the world. I can rewind events back to the moment of my birth. Eida's 16 years old, so she can only go up to 16 years in the past. She says, I can watch everything in the present timeline, but I can't see the future. And you can tell that she's annoyed by what she sees. And I like how the anime, when she cuts on the eye, you see one of the things that we see in the manga, her eyes darken, and you get these little white dots in her eye that showcase the fact that Eida's using her powers, and she uses her powers as a way to start spying on Team 7 and Kawaki. And we jump over to the actual fight itself. And so essentially they're going through their training, and Kawaki's getting very annoyed and pissed off at the fact that they're just sitting there, they're doing the meditation and the chakra control training, and that's the way shinobi training. It isn't just combat training. You have your physical energy, yang chakra, then you got your yin energy, which is the mental and spiritual and meditation, etc. Kawaki has enough of it and immediately just goes to attack Mitsuki, and Mitsuki says like, okay, you want to do actual combat training, and Kawaki compliments Mitsuki and then goes right into continuing the attack. And when Sarada tries to throw a weight around, Kawaki basically says like, yeah, I got no time for this. And so when he lunges to attack at Sarada jumps into the air, she uses her fire style jutsu, shoots the fire style off at him. Kawaki blocks the attack, and unbeknownst to Sarada, because she doesn't have her sharingan cut on, Kawaki's created a shadow clone. So when Sarada throws the shuriken and ends up hitting Kawaki, she ends up hitting a shadow clone itself. That allows Kawaki to come up behind Sarada, and he attempts to slash at her, and Boruto ends up blocking the attack. Now, when this chapter came out, a lot of people got pissed off because it's like, oh, Sarada is a damsel in distress. The Sharingan wasn't on. So it's one of those things that the Sharingan's on, she would have been able to see through the attack. She would have been able to see, number one, that's a shadow clone, and number two, she would have been able to see the fact that Kawaki was attempting that move right there. But what we end up seeing here is that Boruto blocks the attack, and Boruto tells Sarada, don't butt in, I'll handle Kawaki here. And that's where we get the brief flashback with Kawaki, where we see some of Kawaki's training with Jigen. And one of the things that Kawaki says is that the way that Jigen trained me, it was all about combat, and I was forced in a situation where the only thing I could do is grow strong enough to shut him up. And so you see how Kawaki, his whole thing is about giving into his rage and seeking power through that. And Boruto realizes at this point that Kawaki's basically a lost cause, in the sense that Kawaki isn't going to listen and understand to anything other than brute force itself. And so Kawaki and Boruto come to the agreement that whoever wins their fight, that's going to be the person that dictates the way that Team 7 trains. And Kawaki's whole thing is like, hey, we're not going to get stronger through chakra control and etc. And so at first, when they start fighting, Kawaki wins the first round, and he throws out a jab and says, if we keep it this pace, it'll take 5 years before we can catch up to Code, maybe even 10 years if we take our time. And that's when Boruto comes to the conclusion that he needs to use karma in order to defeat Kawaki. Now, the next thing that we get here is that we jump over to Eida, and she tells Code that, like, hey, I know that you want to have your limiters taken off, and Code says that's correct, because I need my limiters removed, because otherwise I can't beat the Hokage and Sasuke Uchiha. And the reason why he's saying that is that Code without his limiters becomes stronger than Jigen but weaker than Ishiki. And you have moments where Eida is teasing him over the way that Jigen died, basically being burned up like a crisp to Kashin Koji, and she teases him on how Ishiki died, where Ishiki died being stomped out by Kawaki and falling for Kawaki's trick because Kawaki used a shadow clone. Well, Eida then reveals the whole thing of why she hates Amado, and Code says, like, hey, you must hate him because he modified your body, because Eida, like Code and the others, is a cyborg. Amado messed around with her human body with all those mechanics, and so Eida says you're only part of the way right, and Eida tries to throw a weight around and tells Bug, how about you get Code out of here? Code insists on staying, and so the conversations end up continuing, and then that's when we find out that Eida's interest in Kawaki comes from the fact that Kawaki, because he's already undergone the Otsukification because of his karma seal, even though it's gone, his body is still genetically Otsuki. Kawaki is immune to her powers, because the only people that don't fall for Eida's powers in terms of the enchantment are people who are blood relatives, and they're the people who have Otsuki genetics. So that would be Boruto and that would be Kawaki, and she makes the concession to Code, like, hey, you can go ahead and you can feed Boruto to the Ten Tails because you need that for your chakra fruit, but Kawaki's mine. So to put this in a further perspective, the reason why Jigen couldn't fall for her enchantment abilities and Jigen could order others to actually kill Eida is the fact that Eida, her powers don't work on Otsuki. Jigen was an Otsuki vessel, so like Kawaki and Boruto, he was technically an Otsuki. That also means that if Ishiki would have been resurrected into Jigen's body, it wouldn't have worked on Ishiki because Ishiki is a full Otsuki. So you get some of the limitations there. Now, to nip this in the bud for anime viewers, that does not mean that she can't see what's going on with Otsuki. Her ability to see things in the past and present still extends to the Otsuki. There's one loophole to this that deals with Boruto and Momoshiki, but we won't be seeing that for a while now. But other than that, that's exactly how her powers work. Now, when Boruto and Kawaki start going into their battle sequence where Boruto's using the karma seal and he's starting to mix up with Kawaki, we see right away that that karma boost is giving Kawaki problems here, because the thing we end up seeing is that Boruto's raw physical strength is way too much for Kawaki to overcome, and there are moments where Kawaki's looking over at Naruto and you can tell that Naruto is his motivation to grow stronger, and you can tell that Kawaki wants to do better in the presence of Naruto, and we see moments where Kawaki starts using the ninja tech inside of his body to use projectiles. Boruto's blocking them with ease. Boruto jumps up in the air. He uses his lightning release thunderclap arrow, ends up attacking Kawaki with it. Kawaki tries to stick his hand out of reflex because he's so used to fighting with the karma seal, and Kawaki ends up taking the attack head on because he can't absorb chakra anymore, and Kawaki's unable to move temporarily because he got hit by the force of the attack. And the significance of Naruto being there's a few things to it, because Naruto has trained Kawaki. You can tell that there are things that Naruto taught Kawaki where Kawaki has made a lot of progress. He's using shadow clones, he's using ninja tactics, he's using changing chakra nature. Naruto's done a very good job, a very underrated job at Kawaki, because some of the things that he's taught Kawaki to do are not things that Genin are expected to be able to do. So you see some of Naruto as a teacher, but if you go back to some of the earlier episodes when Naruto's training Kawaki, the thing he kept telling Kawaki is that you're relying too much on your karma seal and you're relying too much on your ninja tech. You need to rely on using your chakra, and that's ultimately a big part of the reason why he ended up losing against Boruto, because he took that major damage, because when push comes to shove, he reverted back to what he's used to actually doing. It goes back to something people said about Tim Tebow, where if you put Tim Tebow in a lineup with Drew Brees and with Tom Brady, etc., when he's throwing on the field and there's no pads and etc., he's just in shorts. If you had him line up and throw the football with Brees and Brady and Peyton and the rest of them, his mechanics are just as good as them. But when he gets in the actual game and the pressure's there, he reverts back to the bad habits, and you see the bad form and etc., and he can't throw the ball 2 yards downfield accurately. Well, it's the same thing here with Kawaki. When Kawaki gets into a battle situation, he's ultimately, for the most part, relying back on the stuff that Jigen taught him. Now, the thing I will say is that I'm a little disappointed that the Konohamaru moment was cut out of the episode, because there's a moment in the manga where Naruto and Konohamaru, they're watching Boruto and Team 7 fight against Kawaki, and Konohamaru starts to step in, and Naruto just sticks his hand out, and he's basically like, hey, you ain't that guy. Let's let them fight it out for a second. And on one hand, Konohamaru fans are probably glad that their boy wasn't dogged out like that. I wanted to laugh at it. However, getting back to the fight itself, because Boruto ended up defeating Kawaki in this fight, we get a few things that weren't in the actual manga itself. So Boruto starts explaining the reason why he tries not to use the karma seal is because Boruto still feels guilty for what happened with Sasuke, and he's worried that if he starts relying on the karma seal, that he might end up harming people that he cares about, like he did with Sasuke. And Boruto comes to a realization that he can't be picky about how he actually uses power, because he needs to use everything possible in order to defeat the enemy in front of him, in this case to be able to defeat Code. And Kawaki has a line where he says, like, look, if Momoshiki ever takes over your body, I'll finish you with my bare hands. And that goes back to the whole thing of how far Kawaki is willing to go in order to protect Naruto, because he's thinking about Naruto when he says that. And we have a moment at the end of the episode where Kawaki is looking down at his hand where his karma seal used to be, and Kawaki, you can tell he's thinking about it. You can tell he's getting annoyed at the fact that he no longer has karma, and that he's gonna have to try and grow stronger in spite of not having the karma seal. Between that and Eida and Code making their alliance, that's how the episode ends off. We have a few extra scenes in there where Boruto's trying to fix Kawaki's forehead protector that has the Konoha symbol on it. That was not in the manga. That was just extra stuff added in there, likely to try and build it towards a scene that we're going to be getting later on, probably in the next episode. But overall, this was okay. This was an average episode. This was not an episode that if you went into it expecting Sakuga cuts for Team 7 versus Kawaki, you weren't going to get it. Like I said, when we were coming into this arc, I had my expectations in check. I said best case scenario, you would get something like the car arc, but I was going into this mostly expecting this entire arc, outside of a few episodes here or there, to look more like what you got with the Mujina Bandits and Hozuki Castle arc. So like around Boruto episode 141, somewhere around there. Those episodes, that's about what I'm expecting. I'm not expecting anything super crazy consistently all the way through. So I was not expecting this episode here to have Sakuga cuts. And I got exactly what I expected. I expected a 5 out of 10, which is average. However, my episode question to you guys is, who was right in terms of the debate on how to grow stronger? Is it Kawaki? Should they be focusing on combat training? Or were Boruto and Sarada correct that they needed to take a complete approach to their training, not just physical, but also the mental side as well, i.e. training the yin and the yang portion of their chakra? Or while you think that over, click here to watch my Black Clover chapter 351 review, or click here for this Naruto Explained video.